What if I told you that the headache you've been brushing off isn't just a headache at all, but the beginning of a neurological storm that can hijack your brain for days? Most people believe migraines are just really bad headaches, but the truth is far stranger, far more unsettling, and far more dangerous than that simple explanation. Imagine your brain sending warning signals up to 3 days before the pain even starts. Subtle cravings, strange fatigue, sudden irritability. Then flashes of light appear, your vision distorts, maybe your words slip away mid-sentence, and before you know it, you're plunged into a relentless throbbing agony that can last for hours, or even longer. And here's the terrifying part. This isn't rare. Migraines affect nearly 15% of the population, with women carrying the heaviest burden. Yet, despite their reach, they're still dismissed, misunderstood, and underestimated. Welcome to the Wellness Way, where we uncover the truths no one else is willing to tell you. Because if you think a migraine is just a headache, you've already missed the bigger story. Stick with me until the end of this video, and don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel. That way you'll never miss the powerful stories and insights we're bringing straight to you. When most people hear the word migraine, they picture a really bad headache. That's it. End of story. Pop a pill, lie down in a dark room and hope it passes. For years I thought the same. But the more I learned and the more I listened to the stories of people living with migraines, the more I realized how wrong that assumption is. Migraines are not just headaches. They're a neurological event, a kind of storm that rolls through the brain in waves. And what makes them so unnerving is that this storm doesn't always arrive the way you'd expect. It often announces itself days before the pain even hits, like a whisper that grows into a scream. Let me take you through this journey, the 4 phases of a migraine, because once you understand it, you'll never look at headaches the same way again. The early warnings. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling strangely tired, even though you slept fine. You're hungrier than usual, craving foods you don't normally eat. Your neck feels tight. You're irritable, snapping at people for no reason. To most, this sounds like just a bad day. But for someone who gets migraines, this is the premonitory phase, a warning system built into the body that can start as much as 72 hours before the actual pain. What's fascinating is that this isn't random. Scientists believe it ties back to a small but powerful part of the brain called the hypothalamus. Think of it as the body's control center for balance, regulating hunger, thirst, hormones, temperature, even mood. When something in that system falls out of sync, it can trigger those early migraine signs. This made me stop and think, how many times have I brushed off fatigue, cravings, or irritability as just life, when in fact they could be signals of something deeper happening in the brain? For people with migraines, those signals aren't just annoyances, they're potential warnings of a storm about to arrive. The strange lights show, now picture this. You're going about your day when suddenly your vision shifts. Zigzag lines creep across your sight, bright flashes burst in the corners of your eyes, or maybe one side of your face tingles, or your arm feels strangely heavy. In some cases, words get tangled on your tongue. You know what you want to say, but the words refuse to come out. This is the aura phase, and about 1/3 of people with migraines experience it. To outsiders, it might sound like a minor inconvenience, but imagine living it. It's terrifying. Many mistake it for the start of a stroke. And to be honest, if it happened to me for the first time, I'd panic too. What's going on here? The leading theory is something called cortical spreading depression. That's a complicated term, But in simple words, it's like a ripple effect across the brain. Neurons, the brain's messengers, fire in waves and then slip into a kind of shutdown, leaving temporary gaps in how the brain processes sight, sound, language, or movement. That's why the aura can look so different from person to person. Hearing this theory made me realize something. Migraines are not just about pain, they're about the brain itself temporarily misfiring in ways we can actually see and feel. The storm hits. And then it comes. The stage most people know, the headache phase. But even calling it a headache feels like an insult to those who live through it. This is not the dull ache of a long day. It's a pounding, pulsating pain, often on one side of the head, that can stretch for hours or even days. Light feels like knives. Sound becomes unbearable. Even smells can turn against you. Nausea twists in your stomach, and in some cases, even the lightest touch on your skin hurts. This stage is thought to involve the trigeminal nerve, a major nerve of the face, and its interaction with blood vessels around the brain. When this system activates, pain signals flood in, and the brain gets tricked into feeling pain not just inside the skull, but across the face, forehead, and sometimes even the back of the head. It's a cruel trick of biology. The pain you feel may not even come from where you think it does. As I dug into this, I couldn't help but feel a kind of awe. The human body is astonishing, sometimes in beautiful ways, other times in brutal ones. Migraines show us just how interconnected everything is. Brain, nerves, blood vessels, hormones, even emotions. The aftermath. When the headache finally fades, you'd think the nightmare is over. But for many, that's just another illusion. Enter the postdrome phase, a kind of migraine hangover. You may feel drained, foggy, and oddly sensitive. Turn your head too quickly, sneeze or cough, and pain flares back up. It's as if the nervous system remains raw, bruised from the storm. This lingering sensitivity can last a day or more, reminding you that the migraine is not done with you yet. I find this phase especially haunting. It shows that migraines don't just come and go. They leave echoes, fingerprints on the nervous system that take time to fade. Why this matters? So why does any of this matter? Because reducing migraines to bad headaches erases the lived reality of millions of people. It overlooks the science, the phases, the triggers, the neurological roots. But more importantly, it dismisses the human experience, the fear of losing control of your body, the frustration of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of waiting for the next storm. Understanding migraines in their full complexity matters not only for empathy, but also for treatment. Recognizing those early signs in the premonitory phase, or the aura phase, can help people intervene sooner and reduce the severity of the pain. It turns what feels like random suffering into something you can at least try to manage. And here's the deeper lesson I take from this. The body is always speaking. Sometimes in whispers like fatigue or cravings, and sometimes in shouts like blinding pain. Migraines remind us that paying attention to the whispers may help us avoid the shouts. For me, that realization is powerful. Migraines aren't just medical events, they're stories of the body, warnings written in fatigue, flashes of light, and throbbing pain. And the more we learn to read those stories, the better chance we have at rewriting their endings. If there's one thing that surprised me the most while studying migraines, it's not just how complex they are, it's how ordinary, everyday life can turn into a trigger. People often imagine that something as dramatic as head trauma or a major illness must set off these neurological storms. But in reality, the spark can come from something as simple as a bad night's sleep, skipping lunch, or even smelling the wrong perfume. This idea stopped me in my tracks. How can life's smallest details, things most of us don't even notice, hold the power to unleash hours or days of agony? Let's break down the hidden world of migraine triggers, because this is where science and real life collide in fascinating and sometimes frustrating ways. Stress, the invisible culprit. We live in a culture where stress is almost a badge of honor. Work deadlines, financial worries, family obligations, many of us carry them constantly. For someone with migraines, though, stress isn't just an emotional weight. It's a physical trigger. The body reacts to stress by releasing hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, shifting blood flow and tightening muscles. For a brain already prone to migraines, these changes can tip the delicate balance and start the cascade that ends in pain. What struck me is how sneaky this can be. It's not always the stress itself that causes the migraine, but the letdown afterward. Imagine pushing through a tough week at work only to collapse on Friday night. And that's when the migraine strikes. The body, finally relaxing, reacts in ways that can spark the storm. Hormones, the uncontrollable factor. For many women, migraines are closely tied to hormonal shifts, especially around the menstrual cycle. The hypothalamus, which regulates hormone release, is already central to migraines. Add natural hormone fluctuations on top of that, and it's easy to see why women experience migraines at higher rates than men. I've spoken with women who can almost mark their calendars. Like clockwork, the migraine arrives each month. And what makes this especially challenging is that, unlike food or lifestyle triggers, hormones aren't something you can just avoid. That adds another layer of frustration and helplessness to the condition. The role of sleep is supposed to heal, restore, and reset us. But for people with migraines, sleep is a double-edged sword. Too little sleep or even too much can bring on an attack. The brain thrives on rhythm, and disrupting that rhythm, staying up late, waking up early, jet lag or irregular schedules can throw everything off balance. I remember hearing a patient describe their migraines as a punishment for enjoying the weekend. Staying out late, sleeping in the next morning, it seemed harmless. But the shift in sleep schedule was enough to light the fuse. That made me rethink how fragile our body's internal clock really is. Food, drink, and the tricky world of triggers. We all have our comfort foods. For some, though, that favourite glass of red wine or piece of aged cheese might not bring comfort at all. It might bring a migraine. Other culprits include chocolate, processed meats, caffeine, or even skipping meals entirely. But here's the twist. Not everyone reacts the same way. What triggers a migraine in one person might be perfectly fine for another. This variability makes managing migraines a deeply personal puzzle. It's not just about following a universal list of bad foods. It's about carefully tracking your own patterns, sometimes for months, before the hidden culprit becomes clear. And let's be honest, this trial and error process can feel exhausting. Imagine cutting out foods you love, one by one, trying to discover what your brain is rebelling against. It requires patience, persistence, and often the support of loved ones who understand why you suddenly say no to a dinner invitation. Environmental factors. The world around us. Sometimes the trigger isn't in your body at all. It's in your environment. Weather changes, especially shifts in barometric pressure, can set off migraines. Bright lights or flickering screens can do the same. Even strong odors, perfume, smoke, cleaning products have been reported as culprits. What I find fascinating is how unpredictable this makes daily life. You could be walking through a store when someone sprays a fragrance, and within minutes, the migraine machinery starts turning. Or a thunderstorm rolls in, and suddenly your body is bracing for pain, It's a reminder of how vulnerable we are to forces beyond our control. The rare but real triggers. Some triggers are less common, but no less real. Exercise, for instance, is usually good for health, but in some cases, intense physical activity can provoke a migraine. And yes, even sexual activity has been reported as a trigger, though studies suggest this affects only a small percentage of people. Still, the fact that something typically associated with pleasure could instead bring pain highlights just how unpredictable migraines are. The challenge of tracking. Here's the hardest part. The same signals that warn of migraines, like yawning, food cravings, or fatigue, are also things that happen in everyday life. Everyone yawns. Everyone craves certain foods. So how do you know when it's just a random occurrence versus the early whispers of a migraine? That's why doctors often encourage patients to keep a migraine diary. By writing down what they eat, how they sleep, their stress levels, and what symptoms they notice in the days before an attack, patterns can emerge. It's like connecting the dots on a puzzle. The more dots you collect, the clearer the picture becomes. Why this matters to me, what makes this whole trigger story so important, is the sense of control it can bring. Migraines can feel random, cruel, and unstoppable, but learning your triggers, even if it takes time, offers a way to fight back. It turns the migraine from a mystery into a challenge you can prepare for. That doesn't mean you can avoid every attack. Life is messy, and triggers aren't always predictable or preventable. But if you know that stress, certain foods, or lack of sleep are your main culprits, you can at least plan around them. You can make choices that reduce your risk, even if you can't eliminate it entirely. And beyond the science, there's something deeply human here. The act of paying attention, of listening to your body and respecting its signals, can be empowering. It's not just about avoiding pain. It's about building a relationship with your own health, one where you're not just a victim of random storms, but an active participant in navigating them. My reflection: the more I think about migraine triggers, the more I see them as a mirror of life itself. They remind us how interconnected we are with our environment, our habits, our emotions. They remind us that balance matters, that small choices can ripple into big consequences. And maybe that's the hidden gift inside the struggle. Learning to slow down, pay attention, and treat our bodies not as machines to be pushed endlessly, but as ecosystems to be nurtured and protected. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned about migraines is this: timing is everything. The earlier you act, the better your chances of stopping the storm before it destroys your day, or even your week. This isn't just theory. It's something countless migraine sufferers have discovered firsthand. When people wait until the pain explodes, medications often feel like they're too little, too late. But if they recognize the whispers, the fatigue, the cravings, the subtle mood shifts, the flashes of aura, and treat the migraine early, the results can be dramatically better. This insight completely changes the way we think about treatment. Instead of reacting to pain, we can learn to anticipate and outsmart it. The power of early intervention. Imagine if your body gave you a 3-day warning before a storm hit. You'd prepare, right? You'd gather supplies, lock your doors, protect yourself. Migraines often do the same thing. The premonitory phase is that warning. But here's the catch. You have to be paying attention. Doctors often ask patients to look back at the days before a migraine. Did they eat differently, sleep poorly, feel unusually tired or irritable? By mapping these patterns, patients can often spot when a migraine is about to strike, and that's when treatment works best. Medications, lifestyle adjustments, even simple rest applied early can soften or even prevent the worst of the pain. What strikes me is how empowering this can feel. Migraines rob people of control, but by learning to recognize the body's signals, patients can reclaim some of that power. Beyond pills, a holistic approach. Medication is a critical tool, but it's not the only one. Many people find relief by combining medical treatments with lifestyle strategies. Regular sleep, consistent meals, stress management, and hydration all play roles. Some experiment with mindfulness, yoga, or gentle exercise. Others rely on cooling packs, dark rooms, or relaxation techniques. What works varies wildly from person to person. And that's the beauty and the frustration of migraines. They demand personalization. There's no universal cure. But there are countless tools, and the art is finding which combination works for you. I've met people who describe their migraine management like building a toolbox. Maybe medication is the hammer, but diet changes are the screwdriver, and sleep hygiene is the wrench. Each tool alone might not solve the problem, but together they can. The future of migraine care. Here's what excites me. We're living in a time when migraine research is advancing faster than ever. New medications like CGRP inhibitors target the specific pathways involved in migraine pain. Devices that stimulate nerves with gentle electrical pulses are showing promise. Scientists are even exploring how AI and wearable technology could predict migraines before they happen, using subtle changes in sleep, heart rate, or brain activity as clues. Think about that for a moment, a future where your smartwatch buzzes to warn you that a migraine is coming, giving you time to act before the pain begins. That's not science fiction, it's research happening right now. This vision gives me hope, not only for those already living with migraines, but for the millions of children and young adults who might one day face them. Early diagnosis, personalized care, and proactive treatment could change their lives. Reframing migraines as a message. Here's the perspective that shifted everything for me. What if migraines aren't just attacks to endure, but messages from the body? Messages telling us when we're out of balance, overstressed, underslept, poorly nourished. When viewed this way, migraines become more than medical events. They're reminders to pause, to realign, to take care of ourselves before the damage deepens. Of course, this doesn't mean migraines are anyone's fault. Far from it. The biology is complex, the triggers unpredictable. But seeing migraines as signals rather than just punishments can transform the emotional experience. Instead of feeling like a helpless victim, you can become a detective of your own health, learning your body's unique language. A human story, not just a medical one. The science is fascinating, but what moves me most are the stories. People describing how they lost entire birthdays, vacations, or career opportunities to migraines. Parents who couldn't play with their children because the light and noise were unbearable. Students who missed exams, workers who feared losing jobs. Yet alongside the pain, there's resilience. I've heard stories of people who, through trial and error, learned their triggers and built routines that gave them freedom again. People who leaned on family, friends, and communities for support. People who found strength in advocacy, raising awareness so migraines would no longer be dismissed as just headaches. It reminds me that health isn't just biology. It's identity, relationships, hopes, and dreams. Migraines affect all of it. But with understanding and support, people can rebuild. Looking forward, so where does this leave us? For me, the takeaway is clear. Migraines are complex, but they are not unbeatable. They demand respect, attention, and patience. They challenge us to listen more closely to our bodies, to recognize patterns, to act sooner rather than later. The future holds promise, new treatments, new technologies, new awareness. But even now, today, there's power in knowledge. The more we understand the 4 phases, the triggers, and the options for early intervention, the less control migraines have over our lives. And maybe the most important lesson is this: healing isn't always about eliminating pain completely. Sometimes it's about changing the story, from one of suffering to one of resilience, from feeling powerless to finding tools, strategies, and support, from silence to being heard. That's what gives me hope, that by reframing migraines not as an unsolvable curse, but as a challenge to be understood and managed, we can help millions of people reclaim their lives. When I step back and reflect on everything I've learned about migraines, one truth stands out. They are so much more than just headaches. They are complex neurological events that ripple through every part of life. They test patience, resilience, and understanding, not only for the people who live with them, but for those around them as well. What struck me most in this journey is how deeply personal migraines are. No 2 stories are the same. For some, the earliest warnings are cravings and fatigue. For others, it's the sudden flicker of light across their vision. Some find their triggers in food, others in stress, hormones, or sleep patterns. And yet, despite the differences, there's a shared thread: the need to be heard, to be understood, and to find strategies that work on an individual level. The lesson I take from this is one of humility. Our bodies are always speaking, often in ways we ignore. Migraines remind us that whispers, those subtle changes in mood, sleep, or appetite, can hold as much meaning as the loud shouts of pain. If we learn to listen earlier, we may find not only relief, but also a better relationship with our own health. There's also a lesson in resilience. The people I've encountered who manage migraines are some of the strongest I know. They've learned to track their triggers, to advocate for themselves, to adapt. They remind me that strength isn't always about pushing through. Sometimes it's about stepping back, paying attention, and caring for yourself in ways others might not understand. So, how can we apply these lessons to everyday life, even for those who don't suffer from migraines? First, by respecting the signals our bodies give us. Fatigue, stress, and imbalance are not weaknesses. They are warnings. Second, by cultivating empathy. When someone says they have a migraine, we should never dismiss it as just a headache. We should recognize the storm they're facing even if we can't see it. And third, by embracing the idea that health isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, balance, and compassion, both for ourselves and for others. In the end, migraines teach us something profound. Pain is not just an obstacle, but a teacher. It can guide us toward greater understanding, greater balance, and greater care. And while no one would choose to live with migraines, those who do often gain wisdom about the body and resilience of spirit that we can all learn from. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a headache that felt like more than just a headache? What signals do you notice from your body before stress or exhaustion takes over? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective, and others will too. And if you found this video valuable, don't forget to subscribe to The Wellness Way. Your support helps us keep creating content that informs, inspires, and empowers you to live a healthier, more balanced life.